They say the best revenge is living well. But sometimes, living well involves a strategic demolition. My name is Caden Blackwood, and for 2 decades, I was the unseen engine of Horizon Hospitality, our family's proud, if somewhat antiquated, hotel chain. At 45, I wasn't driven by the allure of power or the gleam of corner offices. My satisfaction came from the quiet hum of efficiency, the contented smiles of our staff, and the steady loyalty of our guests across our 7 properties, spanning from the historic cobblestone streets of New Haven to the sun-drenched shores of Charleston. I believed in foundations, in the meticulous details that make a grand vision possible. My hands-on approach, a stark contrast to my sister's, Caden Blackwood's, more performative style, had always been our unspoken arrangement. She was the dazzling orator, the networker who could charm investors and command a conference stage, effortlessly taking credit for the growth I painstakingly fostered through late-night negotiations with suppliers and sweat-soaked renovation projects. I was the one who ensured the boilers hummed, the linens were pristine, and the staff felt like family. The unglamorous work, they called it. I called it indispensable. Then came the day the axe fell. Rhiannon, barely a fortnight into her reign as president of Horizon Hospitality, a title bequeathed to her by our retiring father, Sylvester delivered the news with the chilling precision of a well-rehearsed monologue. The board believes we need fresh perspectives. Caden, her voice, usually a melodic instrument of persuasion, was now a dull blade, severing my 20 years of dedication in one swift stroke. She watched, arms crossed, as I methodically emptied my desk drawer, each item a small monument to my lost tenure. We've brought in a top-tier strategist from Vanguard Resorts to streamline operations. The board she referenced was, in reality, a neatly orchestrated triumvirate. Our father, and 2 of her closest confidantes from business school, conveniently appointed just last week. I offered no protest, no plea. My face remained a mask of polite indifference. "You'll receive 6 months' severance," she continued, glancing at her watch as if my dismissal was merely another tick on her packed agenda. "Human Resources has the paperwork ready." I carefully placed framed photographs into a box, each one a precious fragment of a life now deemed expendable. The faded picture of our grandfather, a stoic pioneer standing proudly before our very first hotel in New Haven, was the last to go. It was a photo Rhiannon had never bothered to display in her opulent office, a telling detail I didn't miss. "Nothing to say. Caden," her tone was laced with a hint of challenge, her perfectly tailored blazer and immaculate manicure a testament to her unruffled composure. I offered a dry, sarcastic smile. "Good luck with the Harbor Grand renovation, Rhiannon." A flicker of panic, swift and almost imperceptible, danced in her eyes. The Harbor Grand, our largest and most prestigious property, was mired in a renovation nightmare, bleeding both time and money, a problem that was now undeniably hers. "We'll manage just fine," she quickly recovered, her voice regaining its polished edge. "My consultant has rescued projects twice that size." I simply nodded, picked up my box, and walked out. 20 years of unwavering commitment dismissed in a 15-minute corporate execution. What Rhiannon, in her relentless pursuit of control, failed to grasp, or perhaps had conveniently forgotten, was a quiet piece of wisdom our father had imparted 5 years prior. "Never put all your eggs in one basket, son," he'd advised, his gaze distant, thoughtful. "The hotel business, it's in our blood, yes, but land. Caden, land is where the true power lies." It was a seed he planted, and I, ever the quiet gardener, had nurtured it in secret, while my sister reveled in her public accolades and mounting titles. As I drove away from the gleaming glass towers of our corporate office in New York City, I felt no despair, only a quiet, resolute patience. And patience, I knew, would reap its rewards when the lease renewals for our most valuable properties came due in just 3 months. I had grown up immersed in the world of Horizon Hospitality, watching my father transform a single, struggling inn in New Haven into a respected regional chain. While Rhiannon orbited him at industry galas and investor briefings, I gravitated towards the humbler, more essential spaces, the boiler rooms, the linen closets, the bustling kitchens. I learned the language of pipes and wiring, the intricate dance of supply chains. By the time I was 16, I could diagnose a faulty HVAC system or negotiate with a textile distributor with the seasoned ease of a veteran manager. "Your sister sees the grand tapestry, Caden," my father would often say, his voice tinged with a blend of pride and gentle resignation. You see the individual threads that hold it all together." It was a delicate balance that had, for years, somehow worked, until it didn't. As my father aged, Rhiannon's ambition metastasized. She began introducing a parade of consultants, each armed with glossy presentations touting organizational synergy and vertical integration. Her conversations shifted from guest satisfaction to national expansion, from comfortable stays to lifestyle branding and celebrity partnerships. Sometimes I genuinely wondered if she remembered that, at its core, our business was simply about providing people with a warm bed and a welcoming smile. 5 years ago, when Father first hinted at stepping back, I saw the ominous handwriting on the wall. During a routine financial review, a critical vulnerability screamed from the spreadsheets. Our 3 most profitable properties, the New Haven Inn, the Charleston Grand, and the aforementioned Harbor Grand, all operated on leased land. The original owners had been elderly when we'd signed the 99-year leases decades ago, and now their heirs were looking to sell. "It's a ticking time bomb, Father," I'd stated plainly over lunch at his favorite seafood bistro. "If someone buys that land and jacks up our rates, we're completely at their mercy." He nodded slowly, a deep furrow appearing between his brows. "I've been meaning to address that, Caden, but with the new Savannah Sands property soaking up all our capital." "I could buy them," I interjected, choosing my words with deliberate care. "Personally, then lease them back to Horizon at the same preferential rates." Father studied me over the rim of his glasses, a mixture of surprise and contemplation in his gaze. "That would require a significant personal investment, Caden." "I've been saving," I replied simply, meeting his gaze, "and I believe in our company." The very next day, he connected me with our corporate bank. 3 months later, the deeds to the land beneath our 3 flagship hotels were quietly, legally mine. The company remained the tenant, bound by a 5-year preferential lease agreement that would soon require renewal. "Does Rhiannon know about this arrangement?" Father had asked as we signed the final papers. "It's all in the corporate documents," I'd said, a slight smirk playing on my lips. "But she doesn't read those unless she absolutely has to." He chuckled softly. "Your sister sees the forest, Caden. You see the trees. Someday she'll understand just how important that is." Now, driving away from Horizon Hospitality for the last time, a cold certainty settled over me. That day had indeed arrived. I hadn't missed the subtle shifts over the past year, Rhiannon's deliberate exclusion of me from strategic meetings, her pointed questioning of my budget requests, the quiet reassignment of my most competent staff. The groundwork for my expulsion had been meticulously laid long before our fresh perspectives conversation. The morning after my dismissal, I woke at my usual pre-dawn hour, 5:30 a.m. For 2 decades, my routine had been dictated by the overnight reports from our properties, preemptively addressing any issues before they could escalate. Today, my phone remained blessedly silent. No emergencies, no fires to extinguish, just the unfamiliar hush of freedom. I made myself a strong, black coffee and sat on my back porch, overlooking the serene expanse of Narragansett Bay. The fishing boats moved silently across the water, constant and purposeful. I'd always admired their quiet efficiency. No wasted movement, no need for recognition, just the steady, unwavering business of carrying value from one place to another. My phone buzzed. A text from Mateo, our long-standing head of maintenance at the Harbor Grand. "Heard what happened, boss. Their loss. New strategist already making cuts. Corners being cut on the renovation. not good. I typed a simple, "Thanks, Mateo," but offered no advice. Not my problem anymore. Another message popped up. This one from Father, breakfast at the Anchor 8M. The Anchor was a greasy spoon diner just 2 blocks from our very first corporate office, a place Father and I hadn't frequented in years. When I arrived, he was already ensconced in a corner booth, looking older, frailer than I remembered. He nodded curtly as I slid in opposite him. "She told me after the fact," he began, without preamble. "I would have handled it differently." "But you didn't stop it," I observed, my voice devoid of accusation, simply stating a fact. He sighed, stirring his coffee with a spoon that seemed too heavy for his hand. "Rhiannon believes Horizon needs to evolve, become more corporate, less family-style management. And you agree?" "I think," he paused, choosing his words with agonizing care, "that your sister has a vision for growth that the board finds compelling." The waitress, a woman who had served us for years, brought our usual orders without a word. Black coffee and blueberry pancakes for him, eggs and toast for me. Some things, at least, remained unchanged. "The land," he said, after she'd retreated. "Rhiannon doesn't fully understand the lease arrangements." I cut my eggs with meticulous precision. "The corporate documents explain everything. Father, you know she doesn't read the fine print." He gave me a pointed look. "The renewal comes up soon." 3 months, I confirmed. "I've already spoken with my lawyer about the terms." Father set down his fork, his gaze unwavering. "What are you planning, Caden?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken histories. In that moment, I realized I had been expecting this conversation for years, preparing for it, even the quiet, reliable son finally possessing leverage over the favored, ambitious daughter. I had envisioned a wave of satisfaction, a surge of vindication. Instead, I just felt profoundly tired. "Market-rate leases," I finally said, the words falling flat in the diner's bustling atmosphere. "Nothing more, nothing less." He nodded slowly, a dawning realization in his eyes. "That will significantly impact our operating costs." "Yes," I met his gaze directly. "It will." We finished our breakfast in silence, the clatter of plates and muffled conversations filling the void. As we stepped outside, he placed a hand on my shoulder, his touch surprisingly firm. "Your sister sees business as a game to win," he said, his voice softer now. "You've always seen it as a foundation to build on. Don't forget that difference." I watched him walk away, his shoulders slightly stooped with age, and for the first time I saw clearly what had been in front of me all along. This wasn't just about Rhiannon underestimating me. It was about our father and his passive enablement, fostering a rift that had been growing for decades. I returned home and walked directly to my home office. On the wall hung the original architectural plans for our new Haven Inn, framed after I purchased the land beneath it. Time to focus on building new foundations. 2 weeks after my dismissal, Rhiannon finally called. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her carefully measured message. "Caden, we need to discuss the transition. Some files are missing. Call me back." No apology, no acknowledgement that she'd summarily fired her brother after 20 years of dedicated service. Just business as usual. I deleted the message and spent the afternoon meeting with Lee Chen, an old college friend who had become a shrewd commercial real estate developer. The next day, Rhiannon appeared at my condo, unannounced. When I opened the door, she brushed past me into the living room, an unwelcome whirlwind of designer perfume and barely contained frustration. "You're ignoring me," she stated, her voice tight with irritation. "I'm respecting your decision to remove me from company business," I replied, remaining standing while she perched, uninvited, on my pristine white couch. "What files are you missing, precisely?" I asked, my voice calm, almost detached. "Vendor contracts, maintenance schedules, the complete renovation plans for the Harbor Grand." She frowned, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows knitting together. and financial documents. There's a gaping hole in our property lease information. Everything is in the shared drive, I replied evenly, organized by property and department, just like always. Well, your organization system isn't exactly intuitive, she retorted, crossing her legs, her designer heel tapping a rapid, impatient rhythm. And your replacement needs context. I poured myself a coffee without offering her one. My replacement is a top-tier strategist who's rescued projects twice our size, Rhiannon. I'm sure he can figure out a filing system. Her eyes narrowed, hearing her own words thrown back at her. This isn't helpful. Caden, the company needs... I don't work for the company anymore, I interrupted, cutting her off cleanly. Remember? Rhiannon stood, smoothing her skirt with an agitated gesture. Fine. I'll have legal request the documents formally. Do what you need to do, I said, walking towards the door, signaling the abrupt end of our conversation. A week later, a certified letter arrived from Horizon Hospitality's lawyers, formally requesting all documents pertaining to company operations. I forwarded it to my own attorney, Patricia Albright, who responded with a detailed list of everything already available on company servers and a polite reminder that my personal notes and materials were, unequivocally, my property. Meanwhile, a trickle of calls turned into a steady stream from Horizon employees. The new consultant, it seemed, was a zealous advocate for efficiency measures. Staff hours were being slashed, critical maintenance deferred, and long-time suppliers replaced with cheaper, inferior alternatives. Morale, I learned, was plummeting. Guests, I heard, were noticing. Rather than satisfaction, I felt a strange, hollow ache. These were people I had worked with for years, some I had personally hired and mentored. Their livelihoods were being jeopardized by my sister's short-sighted vision and my forced absence. Then came the email, a terse inquiry from our property insurance provider, requesting clarification on recent ownership changes affecting 3 key properties. Apparently, Rhiannon had attempted to update the insurance policies and stumbled headfirst into the truth. The company didn't own the land under our most profitable hotels. I did. I forwarded the email to Patricia without a word, my patience now a razor-sharp edge. The next morning, Father called. Did you know? His voice was tight, strained. That Rhiannon doesn't read legal documents. Yes. A heavy sigh. She's called an emergency board meeting. Says you've hidden critical information from the company. Nothing was hidden, I replied evenly. Every lease agreement is properly documented. The company has been paying me rent for 5 years. Paying you? He sounded genuinely confused, a new layer of weariness in his tone. The accounting shows payments to Blackwood Legacy Holdings. She thought that was a property management company. Blackwood Legacy Holdings. My sister, the self-proclaimed visionary, had been signing off on financial statements for years without realizing she was approving payments directly to her own brother. The board meeting is tomorrow, Father continued, his voice softening, a plea now embedded in his words. You should be there, Caden. I'm not on the board anymore, I reminded him, my voice devoid of emotion. Caden, he pressed, a desperate edge to his tone. This is still our family business. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, turning my grandfather's old hotel key between my fingers, the same key that opened the very first property my father had transformed into Horizon Hospitality. Family business, indeed. But families were supposed to protect each other, to build each other up, not tear each other down for personal gain. Patricia called an hour later. Horizon's attorneys are requesting information about the lease renewals. How do you want to proceed? My decision was already made. Send them the new terms. Market rate. No special considerations. The Harbor Grand Hotel stood 8 stories tall on the corner of Anchorage Avenue, its expansive windows reflecting the vibrant morning light off Casco Bay. I had personally overseen its transformation from a tired, forgotten motel into one of our most distinctive properties, a true jewel in Horizon's crown. Now, I sat in my car across the street, watching guests stream through its gleaming glass doors, blissfully unaware of the corporate drama unfolding behind the scenes. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "They've received the new lease terms." Expecting a response today, I knew the numbers would be a shock. The below-market rates I'd offered 5 years ago had saved Horizon Hospitality nearly $2 million annually across the 3 properties. The new terms would eliminate that advantage entirely, hitting their bottom line with the force of a financial tsunami. As I watched, a familiar silver Mercedes pulled into the reserved parking spot near the main entrance. Rhiannon, she wasn't supposed to be in Portland, Maine, today. I sank lower in my seat as she strode into the building, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing emphatically. Curiosity, a relentless beast, got the better of me. I called Mateo. "Your sister's on the warpath, boss," he answered, his voice a low, conspiratorial murmur, foregoing any formal greeting. "Emergency inspection. Brought the new consultant too." "What are they looking for?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. "Property documents, blueprints," he whispered. "Said something about a structural assessment. Between us, Caden, I think they're trying to figure out if they can challenge your ownership claim." After thanking him, I drove to the Cumberland County Public Records Office. Using my laptop, I pulled up the original deed transfers, property surveys, and lease agreements. All perfectly legal, all properly filed, just as I expected. What I didn't expect was what I found in the adjacent county records. A permit application, filed 2 years ago by Rhiannon, using her married name, Rhiannon Pedro, a development permit for a large-scale commercial property on undeveloped oceanfront land just outside Portland city limits. I checked the business entity, Pedro Ventures LLC, not Horizon, a separate company entirely, with my sister as the sole proprietor. Further digging revealed similar permits filed by Pedro Ventures in New Haven and near our Charleston Grand property, all for competing luxury hotel developments. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. While I had been faithfully managing our family's hotels, Rhiannon had been meticulously planning to launch her own, directly competing chain. She hadn't fired me because she thought I was incompetent. She had fired me because I was an inconvenient obstacle, a loyal brother standing in the way of her true, unbridled ambitions. I called Patricia immediately. "I need you to look into a company called Pedro Ventures LLC. Everything you can find." 2 days later, we had the full, chilling picture. Rhiannon had been covertly courting investors for her own luxury hotel brand for nearly 3 years. Her business plan, which Patricia had obtained through a well-placed contact, explicitly mentioned leveraging expertise and clientele developed at Horizon Hospitality and targeting the same lucrative markets where Horizon's most successful properties operate. The morning of the emergency board meeting, I received a call from an unexpected source, Julian Tim, one of Rhiannon's business school friends who sat on our board. "I've seen the lease renewal terms, Caden," he said, without preamble, his voice tight, "and I've heard rumors about Pedro Ventures." "Not just rumors, Julian," I replied, my voice steady. A long pause stretched between us. "I respected your father," he finally said, his tone softening. "That's why I joined this board." Another pause. "Rhiannon assured us you were stepping away voluntarily, that you wanted to explore other opportunities." "Did she mention her own other opportunities?" A heavy sigh. "No. That's why I'm calling. I hear papers shuffling in the background. The board meeting is at 2. I think you should know that Rhiannon is going to propose Horizon sell the Harbor Grand, New Haven, and Charleston properties. Says the new lease terms make them unprofitable." The final, devastating piece clicked into place. She wanted Horizon to sell the hotels, so her new company, Pedro Ventures, could acquire them at distressed prices. The buildings, not the land, creating a convoluted scenario where her new venture would become my tenant. "Thank you for telling me, Julian," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "I didn't tell you anything, Caden," Julian replied, and then the line went dead. I sat very still, letting a cold, simmering rage wash through me. This wasn't just business anymore. This was betrayal on a level I hadn't imagined. Instead of attending the board meeting, I flew to Chicago to meet with Lena Petrova, CEO of Global Hotels, a rapidly expanding international chain. We had crossed paths at industry events over the years, and she had once attempted to recruit me. At the time, I had politely declined, out of an ingrained, almost sacred, loyalty to my family's business. Now, that loyalty felt profoundly misplaced. Interesting timing. Caden, Lena remarked, a shrewd glint in her eyes as we settled into her sleek, minimalist office overlooking Lake Michigan. I heard Horizon Hospitality is considering divesting some properties. News, it seemed, traveled at the speed of light in the hospitality world. 3 properties, I confirmed. Their most profitable ones, she leaned forward, her gaze piercing. And you happen to own the land beneath them. I nodded. A situation my sister failed to appreciate until recently. Lena's smile was all business, sharp and incisive. So, what exactly are you proposing, Caden? A partnership, I stated clearly. Global Hotels acquires the buildings when Horizon sells. I maintain ownership of the land, but offer preferential lease terms to you. I slid a neatly organized folder across her polished desk, detailed financials, current operations, and my comprehensive proposal. While Lena meticulously reviewed the documents, I gazed out at the sprawling urban landscape. 20 years at Horizon Hospitality, and I had never had an office with a view like this. Rhiannon had always insisted the best spaces were needed for client meetings, and, of course, her own sprawling office, always the face of the company, always front and center. These properties fit our expansion strategy perfectly, Lena said finally, snapping the folder shut. But I'm curious. Why not simply raise the rent and force your sister to keep operating them? You'd make more money. Because she's already planning to launch a competing hotel chain, I explained, the words feeling almost clinical as they left my lips. One that would directly target Horizon's market. Lena's eyebrows rose in surprise. While still running Horizon? That's ambitious. That's one word for it. I kept my voice neutral, detached. I believe her plan was to devalue these properties, have Horizon sell them, then acquire them through her new venture, Pedro Ventures, at significantly reduced prices. With you as her landlord, Lena chuckled, a dry, knowing sound. Awkward. I prefer to choose my business partners more carefully. I met her gaze directly. Global Hotels has a reputation for retaining staff during acquisitions. That matters to me. Lena studied me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Family businesses are complicated, Caden. This isn't about family anymore, I replied, the truth of it chillingly clear. It's about doing the right thing for the people who built these hotels. 2 days later, Global Hotels' legal team began drafting acquisition proposals. Meanwhile, I contacted Mateo and other key staff members at the 3 properties, discreetly informing them of potential changes and reassuring them that their positions would be secure. The news broke faster than expected. A prominent hospitality industry blog published a speculative piece about Horizon Hospitality's alleged financial troubles and Global Hotels' sudden interest in their prime locations. Rhiannon's response was immediate and predictable. A company-wide email denying any plans to sell properties and reaffirming Horizon's strong market position and unwavering commitment to growth. Then my father called, his voice heavy with an unfamiliar weariness. The board rejected her proposal to sell. Good, I said simply, a sliver of grim satisfaction piercing through my calm. She's furious, he continued. Says you're undermining the company. He paused, a deep, rattling sigh escaping his lips. She found out about your meetings with Global. I remained silent, letting the accusation hang in the air. Caden, he sighed again, more deeply this time. What are you trying to accomplish here? The question hung between us, heavier than he knew. What was I trying to accomplish? Revenge? Justice? Or something more fundamental, a reckoning long overdue for 2 decades of silent service and quiet dedication? I'm protecting what I built, Father, I answered finally, the words imbued with a quiet power, the same way you taught me. 3 weeks later, Horizon Hospitality's stock dropped a precipitous 12% following a dismal quarterly report showing declining revenue and escalating operational costs. The same day, I received a formal request from the board, notably, minus Rhiannon for a meeting to discuss strategic alternatives for challenged properties. My lawyer, Patricia, and Lena's team prepared meticulously. When the day came, I walked into Horizon Hospitality's opulent conference room for the first time since my dismissal. Rhiannon sat at the head of the long mahogany table, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. Our father sat to her right, looking every one of his 75 years, his usual vibrant energy replaced by a deep-seated weariness. The remaining board members filled the seats, their expressions carefully neutral, betraying nothing. I took my place at the opposite end of the table, opened my portfolio, and waited for them to make the first move. "Let's be clear about what's happening here," Rhiannon began, her voice clipped, sharp as a freshly honed blade. "My brother is attempting a hostile takeover of the company our father built." "Incorrect," I replied calmly, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil churning within me. "I'm simply exercising my rights as a property owner. Global Hotels is interested in acquiring buildings Horizon Hospitality no longer wishes to maintain, given the new lease terms." Julian Tim cleared his throat, a nervous cough. "The board never approved selling those properties, Rhiannon." "The board was presented with misleading information," I countered, sliding folders to each board member, the soft rustle of paper loud in the suddenly silent room. "These documents," I continued, my gaze sweeping across their faces, "show that while serving as president of Horizon Hospitality, Rhiannon was simultaneously developing a competing hotel chain targeting the same markets." The room went utterly silent. My father's face drained of color as he slowly opened his folder, his gaze falling upon the damning evidence. "This is absurd," Rhiannon sputtered, her voice cracking, the facade finally crumbling. "Pedro Ventures is a consulting firm, not a hotel development company with permit applications in 3 cities where Horizon operates," I finished for her, my voice unwavering, "and a business plan explicitly stating its intention to leverage expertise and clientele developed at Horizon Hospitality." Our father turned to her, the raw betrayal evident in his eyes, a silent accusation more potent than any shouted word. "Is this true, Rhiannon?" Her silence was her answer, a damning admission hanging heavy in the air. I continued, pressing my advantage. "Global Hotels' offer exceeds market value for the properties. It includes guarantees to retain all current staff and honor existing customer commitments." I paused, letting the implication sink in. Something Rhiannon's venture had no intention of doing. "You've been planning this for years," she accused, her voice shaking with rage, finally losing all composure. "Buying the land, waiting to spring your trap." "No," I corrected, my gaze fixed on her. "I bought the land to protect our family business. You're the one who decided I wasn't part of that family anymore." The board voted unanimously to accept Global Hotels' offer, with one abstention, our father, who sat motionless throughout the proceedings, his gaze fixed on some distant point. As the meeting concluded, Rhiannon stormed out without a single word, the swing of the door a violent punctuation mark. Julian approached me afterward, a look of profound relief on his face. "The board will be requesting Rhiannon's resignation tomorrow," he said quietly. "We'll need interim leadership while we restructure." I shook my head, a quiet certainty in my voice. "That won't be me. I've made other arrangements." 1 year later, I stood on the rooftop terrace of the former Harbor Grand Hotel, now the flagship of Global Hotels' Atlantic Collection. The property had been renamed the Blackwood Beacon, a nod to its past and a symbol of its renewed purpose. Much remained unchanged. Mateo still ran maintenance with his usual gruff efficiency. Most of the dedicated staff had stayed on, and guests still enjoyed the same breathtaking views of Casco Bay that had always made it special. Lena joined me, a faint smile playing on her lips as she handed over a quarterly report. Revenue up 17% from last year. Caden, you were right about the local market potential. As consulting director for Global Hotels Regional Properties, I worked primarily behind the scenes, negotiating with suppliers, mentoring staff, ensuring quality standards. No corner office, no power suits, no board politics, just the work itself, which was, truly, all I had ever wanted. "Have you seen your father?" Lena asked carefully, her voice softer than usual. I nodded. "Monthly dinners. He's adjusting to retirement." After the takeover, he had stepped down from Horizon Hospitality entirely. The company still operated 5 properties, though none were performing as well as the ones Global Hotels had acquired. "And your sister?" "Pedro Ventures filed for bankruptcy protection last month," I said, without satisfaction or regret, simply stating a fact. Turns out hotel development requires more than ambition and a business degree. We stood in comfortable silence, watching fishing boats navigate the sparkling waters of the harbor, a timeless rhythm that soothed the soul. Eventually, Lena left for another meeting, and I remained alone with my thoughts, the gentle sea breeze whispering secrets through my hair. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Dinner tonight. Bringing the grandkids." I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile, and confirmed. My niece and nephew weren't responsible for their mother's actions, and I had made sure my relationship with them remained intact throughout the corporate turmoil. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery hues, I took one last, lingering look at the property. Not just the elegant building, but the land beneath it, the enduring foundation that made everything else possible. In the end, that's what Rhiannon had never truly understood. Success wasn't about who sat in the biggest office or who had the fanciest title. It was about creating something solid enough to weather any storm, something built on integrity and true value. I turned away from the breathtaking view and headed downstairs. Time to prepare for dinner with family. The parts worth keeping, anyway.